You know, a lot of times on a lot of conservative channels, on a lot of pages that like to go into what cultures are so negative, the black culture is always brought up. And the question is usually brought up, how do youth today wind it up so wrapped up in negative black culture? And I'm here to give you guys the answer. So like, subscribe, comment. The true answer is because the youth today are catching strays from things that happened generations before us. Like, if you are 18, 17 years old today, you're embracing cultures from the people who gave it to you that were about 50 years old. So this really had nothing to do with you. But what happens when you're 17 years old and all the negative aspects of black culture are sitting right outside of your door? What happens when all the negative aspects of black culture you're taught to embrace? And you're not just taught to embrace it by black people, you're taught to embrace it by all people. You'll always be able to find somebody from a different race that as soon as something happens, they just associate it to black culture automatically, because this is just what we do. So I don't know how you guys expect the youth to have any kind of answer other than this is just what we do. Boys in the Hood came out. Colors came out, movies like that came out. The men around that time adopted that culture, assuming that it was ours, even though that's not what they were seeing outside of their door. Some people were, but a lot of people weren't. That was more of just a strictly California thing. Everyone else was living completely different lives until it got adopted by movies that had nothing to actually do with us. It exposed the rest of the United States to a culture that was just a small fragment of California. A small portion of California was dealing with this, and it was given to us as black culture. The old grandmama coming out with the shower cap on and the shirt with no bra and the messed up robe. All of that is not black culture. You don't remember your grandmother doing that. You don't remember the ladies in the church doing that. You don't remember the black women you were growing up around behaving like that, especially kids like me who are around 30 years old. We got to see so much positivity coming from black people. We didn't hear any complaining. We weren't taught to blame the white man. We had our chin up, chest out. We were the generation that really wanted to grind for it. We seen what was available to us, and we really wanted to tackle it head on. The youth that came after us is in double jeopardy because the music began to change. The frequency of music began to change. The food began to change again. And the entire culture began to change. So the ones that were 30 or so, a lot of us may have grown up without a father, but it wasn't that many of us. We get to the 17, 18-year-old kids today and younger, 75% of them are growing up in a single parent household. So what happens? No matter how good of a job that mama wants to do, mama gotta work. No matter how good of a job she wants to do, mama gotta work. So what happens when mama has to have two jobs? She's working double overtime to be able to afford birthdays and holidays and just regular bills. Where does it leave the kid? It leaves the kid to programs that don't keep track of you. So they'll drop you off at the Boys and Girls Club where you could just leave and rip and run the streets afterwards. And after a year or so of you doing this, mama just accept it for what it is. And you start embracing the negative aspects of black culture. So when people are coming to you and talking about family values, when people are coming to you and talking about being with your family and sitting down for dinner and learning about this and learning about that, that does not register to black children. And I know we're supposed to be in classrooms together where everyone could be taught together because everyone has similar experiences, but that's not true. For black children, this stuff does not register. From grade 0 all the way up until 12th grade, you have never learned about anything positive that black people have ever did. When they show us in the history books, when they show us in social studies, they only show the Bushmen of Africa with the grass skirts and the bow and arrows. They don't talk to you about Mali. They don't talk to you about ancient Zimbabwe. They don't tell you that we're the oldest people on planet Earth, coming from the oldest languages with the oldest megalithic structures. They don't give us anything to aspire to be outside of slaves. Outside of slavery, there's nothing else about those stories that register to us because none of it is positive. It doesn't get positive up until the point that the slaves get freed in America. And once those slaves get freed in America, it's followed by Jim Crow and redlining and a whole bunch of other shit. Now, it does get greater at a point where black people are free. Inventions start getting, matter of fact, it was basically right after we got free. Things got really good for black people. We maintained those skills, raised good kids. Everything was all right. But besides that, we're not getting anything positive to aspire to be. And we have so many different inventions. The refrigerated trucks that drive the food around America, invented by a black man. The home security system invented by a black woman that was scared to stay home by herself, so she invented the security system. Madam C.J. Walker with the makeup and hair care industry. So many different great black people that we had, and we learned little to nothing about them. So the white kid gets to leave with a whole lot of pride and patriotism in a country that he fought for, even though black people fought for the exact same country. We just don't get to leave with that same sense of pride. And then white people get this thing called religion, where they get to see that God looks like them. God's white with blonde hair, and he's this tall guy that has a deep voice that comes out of the sky. I don't know how y'all think that's supposed to register to black children. Jesus, his son, looked like a surfer out of the beaches of California. That doesn't register with black people. The angel's white. It doesn't register with black people. None of this stuff registers with us. We're not being... And I don't even agree that the teachers have to be black. That's not something that I stand on, that I think that teachers have to be black in order to teach black children. I don't think that that's it. But I think that they need to be engulfed in what is black culture before they can start to teach other black kids, because you just don't understand what the average black kid is going through. You see the frustration when he's in class and you just think this is how black people act. They just act out. You don't know what's going on with him back at home. You don't know if frustrations are getting taken out on this kid. You don't know the kind of life he lives. You don't know that that kid hasn't eaten in 3 days. You don't know these things. And this kid's just coming to school with an attitude all day. You label him ADHD, put him on some drugs, put him in a special class, and we never get what we need to out of these children. And it winds up with a cycle that's just doomed. Now, me personally, I don't really like the school system anyway, because to me, the school system is set up the exact way as the prison system is. To me, prison is just extended detention. When I was in detention, I was in class with all the other bad kids that just happened to be all of my friends, where we took over the place and did what we wanted to. When I got to prison, I was in there with the same people doing the exact same shit, eating the exact same food off the exact same trays, having to behave the exact same way. Programmed to be robots, never learning anything else. But then you look at the better schools, the private schools, and you start to see where there's an extra teacher in the classroom to be able to help children that need a little bit of extra help. You start to see that the curriculum is a little bit different. It's a little bit more well balanced, where kids can have some kind of voice and opinion. You can ask the teacher things that goes into depth a little bit more. Those things are available to you in the private schools. Trades are available to you. Internships are available to you. But when you're coming from the public school, none of this stuff is available. None of it's available. That's why they're dropping out in the 8th grade, 9th grade. None of it registers. But the reason that young black youth embrace the negative aspects of black culture is because somebody told us that that's the positive aspects of black culture. I'm black. I'm going to knock you the fuck out if we ever have to get into a fight. That's the negative aspects of black culture being put onto us by other groups of people. Because this whole warrior gene that black people have, they just automatically assume that black people are more violent and better in combat. Even though we've lost multiple times. We winded up in slavery because we lost. The Arabs, they won. The Romans, they won. The Greeks, they won. The Persians, they won. White folks, they won. So this whole warrior myth that black people are just better fighters and all of that, apparently not. Black people are just more violent. Apparently not. After black people were free, were there a bunch of rebellions where black people just went out, masked off a bunch of white people? No. Was the retaliation anything that white people would have done if they were the ones freed afterwards? No. So this whole knack for violence that they think that black people have, we don't have. That is negative aspects of black culture being put onto us by other groups of people who think this about us. And we take it and wear it like it's our own. The lack of vocabulary, the excuses to not speak properly. Do you know that Africans in Africa that speak French speak a better version of French than some people in France? It's their second language, and they speak it more fluently than the people who live in the place that created the language in the first place. They do it better. So it's no excuse that if you're a black person speaking English, that we should be making up excuses to not speak proper English. That's dumb. And I don't think that teachers need to be adjusting to the way that black people talk so we can learn how to talk worse. So now when we go to do interviews for jobs, we don't seem like we fit. because they don't really want you speaking like that in some of these upscale places. And I get it. You just assume that's black culture. There are white hillbillies that won't get hired and places where other white men will get hired. I'll repeat that. There are white hillbillies with deep Southern accents that will not get hired versus the proper English speaking white man that grew up in Boston. The place just doesn't want that. They want proficiency. And that's what I love so much about seeing black people from the 70s, the 60s, the 40s, all the way back to right before, all the way back until we were freed. Such decent people, such clean people, such hardworking people. And we lost those ethics. We gave it all up to embrace things that was given to us. It wasn't ours. It was given to us. We weren't walking around with our pants sagging. That was given to us. Pull up your britches. Old school people always said these things. These are not things that are foreign concepts to us. While we were busy pulling our pants down because that's what the movie showed, the adults were telling us to pull our pants up because that's not how to conduct ourselves. But the movies just kept rolling out and the music just kept rolling out and fashion began to adjust to what was popular, and what was popular at the time was the negative aspects of black people. So they exploited it. And we just embraced it. Being single and being ratchet and not needing no man and all of that. The white women that was saying that had husbands. That was the trickery. The white women that were preaching that feminism stuff were going home to husbands afterwards. Trickery. Those small little pockets of places where black people were acting out of control, that wasn't the normal for us. A lot of us had parents, unfortunately, and it may not even be unfortunately, a lot of us had parents like the Jackson 5. We had very strict parents that didn't want us out there getting involved in that fuckery. We grew up in the era where when a black child did something and the mother said, I did not raise him like that, chances are the parent didn't raise him like that. Today, the parents aren't even claiming that they didn't raise them like that. The parents are trying to figure out why you have a problem with them raising them like that. Just let that sink in for a second. We had parents that said, we didn't raise them like that. And they meant it because they didn't raise us like that. Today's parents wonder why you have a problem with them being raised like that. Never did I get in trouble by my teacher. And my mother came up to the school and cursed the teacher out. Never. Never. My mother carried herself with such decency. Coming from the deep South, the cotton picking South, with the cotton fields, took us there every year. Grew up in some of the worst times to be black that there was. Very prominent black family that I got to grow up with. Very decent morals. But the music and things got to me. I felt out of place. Why we got to speak proper English? The rappers ain't speaking proper English. Why we got to speak proper English? I'm watching the gangs on TV. I'm seeing gangland. They're trying to keep me far away from this stuff. But they also don't want to. They also don't want to grow the kids up in so much of a bubble that they can't associate when they go back outside. So they're doing the best that they can to attempt to keep up with the Joneses, but also try to protect the children at the same time. And you're going to lose a few. You're going to lose a few. So when y'all wonder why young black kids embrace the negative aspects of black culture, it's simply because we were told that that is our culture. When we wore dashikis, y'all got mad at us and told us to go back to Africa. We're not going to act like we forgot the reason that black culture got thrown away. When we were wearing the dashiki hats, y'all were telling us to go back to Africa. You're an American. This is why I always say it's so important to never throw the African out. Because when you throw the African out, you want to take on everything but the African. Now black people are the Hebrews. Now black people are the Native Americans. Now black people are the Mayans. And white folks are getting frustrated with black people because black people want to claim everybody else's culture as their own. But when we try to embrace our culture, y'all wanted to send us back out of the country. Oh, you want to wear dashikis? You on that moon and the stars stuff. You need to go back to Africa with that. When we were trying to reconnect back to Africa to try to get some of our culture back, y'all didn't want us like that. When we grew our hair out, y'all had a problem hiring us with that. I believe it was not long ago where black hair was just deemed as being sanitary to work in corporate America. It was declared unsanitary. Our natural hair declared unsanitary to work in corporate America. So when we attempted to embrace our culture, y'all told us no. When we attempted to go back and learn the African languages, y'all had a problem with that. When we went back and started finding out that Egypt is in Africa and it was by black people, and the Nubians have a culture that's older than the Egyptians, so clearly it's the exact same culture coming through the Sahara. When we found out that E1B1A is one of the most prominent haplogroups in Egypt, and we just happen to have the exact same haplogroup here in America, and we tried to reconnect ourselves back to a culture that taught about peace and taught about respecting women and carried ourselves with dignity and had us getting back together as couples and opening jazz clubs and wanting to work for ourselves. When we started doing that, we started getting complaints about, oh, you guys want to segregate again. Oh, you guys want. No one complains to the Chinese when you go to Chinatown and there's no other race working there. I'll repeat that. There's never a problem when you go to Chinatown and you don't find any other race working there. It's never a problem when you go to the Indian beauty supplies that sell all the black stuff to black people and there's no black people working there. You never have a problem when you go to Little Italy and there's no one working there but Italians. You never have a problem when you go to Florida and you find the section with the Cubans and there's nothing but Cubans working there. It's never declared segregation. Only when black people attempted to do it was it declared segregation. So when we tried to move away from that and embrace cultures that didn't make sense to us and winded up lost, now they want to wonder why we're lost in the first place. Oh, now you want to wonder why we're lost. Oh, just accept this Christianity, the same ones that the KKK used to enslave you guys in the first place. The same Christian book that the Christians came and enslaved you guys with in the same place. And if not that, here, take this Quran, the same one that the Arabs used to do the sub-Saharan slave trade, which lasted about 1,500 years through Africa. But again, no one calls it segregation when the Arabs only work for themselves, when the Indians only work for themselves, when the Guyanese only work for themselves, when the Mexicans only work for themselves and want to live with themselves and go to stores that involve themselves. When they do that, it's, oh my God, look, they're embracing their culture. When black people do it, it's, oh, they're trying to segregate again and cause problems. Then you wonder what's wrong with the youth afterwards. No, we can't agree on a culture because our cultures get declared radical. I would think Chinatown is a very radical way to re-empower Chinese people in America, to create a whole section of a town where you only hire yourselves to sell your own things and you don't give no one else in America a job. I would think that's segregating a little bit more than wanting to open and go to black businesses. But when black people like to shop at just black businesses, it's always met with some type of egregious look. It's always met with, you guys are trying to bring back slavery, or you guys are always complaining when we say that we need more black businesses, when we say we need more black teachers, when we talk about how the farmland was taken from black people because of the refusal to give these black people the same grants that you were giving white people. So black people lost thousands of acres of farmland. So when you wonder why black people are so lost and taking on negative parts of cultures, the answer is because we weren't able to practice our own. And what else is weird is, when the Italians did this, all you guys did was make movies out of it. I'll repeat, when the Italians were Tommy gunning people down in Harlem, when the mob was taking over America, when Scarface and them built Florida on drug money, you guys made a movie about it and made it seem heroic. Made a movie about it and made it seem heroic. The Italian people to this day, their mob is embraced. Their mob isn't shunned. Their mob isn't looked at as bad. Their mob is embraced. Their movies do great. Whole sequels about crime committed by Italians to Italians, deleting each other by the hundreds of thousands. No one had an issue with it. No one had a problem with it because they were Christians, still decent people, just a few bad ones. But when we have just a few bad ones, we all get blamed for it. We all get blamed for it. It automatically becomes a part of our culture all of a sudden. How come the Italians don't get blamed for what they did for years? The underground alcohol ring, who was that ran by? The Italian mob, who was bringing in a lot of the drugs that was killing the Americans. It was the Spanish and the Italians. Who gets blamed for the drug crises throughout America? Black people. Where do the drugs get funneled to? Black people. Who did the American government send the drugs to? Black people. The Rick Ross case. The government was 100% in on the drugs coming from South America and getting funneled into the black community to fund the war that they had back in South America. Did it on purpose. We didn't have trade routes. We didn't have connections with Mexicans. We didn't have these things. Black people was doing disco and a little bit of coke like everybody else. But now when drugs get sold, it automatically gets accused of being a black person thing. When black people were selling cannabis, it was the most horrible thing on planet Earth. When white people started selling cannabis and went legal, and they were growing the cannabis the entire time. They were up in the mountains getting misdemeanors and little to no time for growing the drug. But when we get caught with the drug afterwards, we get all the prison time. In New York State, cultivation was a misdemeanor to cultivate marijuana. Possession of the marijuana after it was cultivated was a felony. Guess who was doing the cultivation? And guess who was getting the possessions? When the hippies were standing out in front of city hall places on 420s, lighting their joints up, smoking, having a good old time, psychedelics on mushrooms, putting their arms together, smoking in front of police. It gets documentaries and gets put on the news. Black people smoke weed and go to prison. And no one said anything. And I'm not even here to complain about all of that. But when you guys wonder what we're repairing ourselves from, it's from long lines of damage. Long lines of damage. Roughly going on about 200 years of damage now. The decline was quick. That's about 2 grandmothers ago. The decline was quick. If you guys like these conversations, make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, leave a comment if you guys like these conversations. We will do more of them if you guys want them live next time so that you could jump in, be involved in this conversation, whether you agree or disagree. I don't care whether you agree or disagree. I don't care what color your skin is. I don't care what part of the world that you come from. If you have input on topics like this and other topics, we're going to get into some politics and all the other fun stuff. Of course, we got to go there with it. But, if you guys would love to have these conversations, drop it down in the comment section. And next time we'll start setting the time. We'll get this show more regular so you guys